And right now on our News at 6, health concerns stemming from the Dan River disaster. Good evening. I'm Pam Salsby.
And I'm Sean Maroney. Thanks for joining us. One state leader making headlines today by calling for a study into so-called cancer clusters near Duke's coal ash sites. Now, just to get you caught up, Duke Energy spilled 35 million gallons of coal ash, a toxic sludge, into the Dan River north of Greensboro in February. Now there's debate between Duke and state regulators over who's responsible for cleaning it all up. Duke Energy has about a dozen current or retired coal facilities in North Carolina. Our Steve Sprague is reporting near one of them in Moncure.
Off in the distance, you can see a retired power plant that does have a coal ash pond associated with it here in Moncure. In fact, Duke Energy was actually cited by the state for illegally dumping wastewater from that coal ash pond into a nearby stream. And it's concerns about that coal ash that have one state lawmaker calling for a health probe. Thousands of people live near the state's 33 coal ash ponds.
Kids would come and play in this thing years ago when I was a kid.
Swimming in it.
Swim in it. The neighborhood kids did.
Those kids and others may have been exposed to dangerous pollutants which might later cause all sorts of medical problems. That's why Representative Kelly Alexander Jr. says we need to start a long-term study which could detect what are called cancer clusters near the coal ash ponds.
We've got to have strong data that tells us what the health conditions of people are.
Duke Energy says people shouldn't worry.
There is no evidence that should give neighbors any concern.
But it's years of exposure which worry some.
We're talking about things that don't develop in the short term. They develop in the long term. We don't want eventually to have a Love Canal situation.
Love Canal was a New York State neighborhood where chemicals dumped into the ground decades earlier began causing birth defects and other health problems in the mid-70s. Eventually, more than 800 people were relocated from the area, and it became a Superfund site. Now, nothing like that has happened with the coal ash sites, but Representative Alexander says the state can't afford to wait.
The state I believe, has a responsibility to get the ball rolling.
But what about the cost of a coal ash study?
It should be a joint endeavor between the state and the utility. And I don't think the utilities' cost should be passed on to ratepayers.
In the meantime, the representative is calling for the governor to take the lead in all of this. He said if the governor fails to act, then in the next long session, he will file a bill which will then mandate a health study. I'm Steve Sprague, WNCN News.
And WNCN Investigates has been in front of this developing story, from a history of violations to the impact on the environment and wildlife. Go to WNCN.com and click on Investigate.